Today, we are going to take a deep dive into one of the most influential and, let's be honest, kind of baffling spiritual texts of the 20th century, A Course in Miracles. We're going to unpack its wild origin story, break down what it actually teaches, and explore the pretty radical way it asks us to look at, well, everything. You see, to really get the Course, you have to understand where it came from. And it didn't start in some peaceful monastery or on a quiet retreat. Nope. It began in the high-stakes, super stressful world of a big-name university, with a professional relationship that was, to put it lightly, an absolute train wreck. That's actually how the people involved described the environment that somehow became the catalyst for this whole thing. The tension was so thick, the conflict was so bad, that it basically forced two brilliant academics to throw their hands up and desperately look for another way. All right, so let's meet the main players in this story. Dr. Helen Schucman and Dr. William Thetford. They were two sharp, highly respected clinical psychologists working at Columbia University in New York City. And for a long time, they really did not get along. For 7 straight years, their relationship was just defined by conflict. Their department was this intense pressure cooker of professional rivalries, judgment, and just constant aggression. And all that strain made working together incredibly difficult and, pretty miserable. And then, one spring afternoon in 1965, something shifted. Bill, who was usually the quiet, reserved one, just couldn't take it anymore. He gave this really heartfelt speech to Helen, saying there has to be a better way, a kinder way for us to be with each other. And in a move that completely stunned him, Helen didn't argue. She actually agreed to help him find it. And that right there, that simple agreement, is what the Course itself would later call the holy instant. It's that one critical moment when two people decide to put their own agendas aside and unite for a common goal. This one act of joining between Helen and Bill kicked off a series of events that neither of them could have ever seen coming. Okay, so this is where the story takes a really wild turn. It goes from everyday academic drama straight into the realm of the mystical. Because after that moment, Helen, who was a skeptical, atheistic psychologist, mind you, started having some very, very strange experiences. She started having these incredibly vivid visions and dreams. Weird psychic stuff started happening all the time. A figure she identified as Jesus kept popping into her mind, and pretty soon an inner voice began giving her direct guidance. Now, this was super unsettling for Helen. She just called it the voice, because even saying the name Jesus was too much for her to handle. Then, on the night of October 21st, 1965, the voice spoke these exact, unmistakable words. Totally freaked out, Helen called Bill. And he just calmly said, "Why don't you just write down what it says? We'll look at it in the morning." And, well, that's how it all started. What happened next was this incredibly disciplined, 7-year-long process. And this wasn't some kind of trance. Helen was wide awake the whole time. She would hear this inner dictation, scribble it down like crazy in her shorthand notebooks. And then the next day, they'd sneak in time between their real jobs, where she'd read it all back to Bill, who typed out every single word. So after 7 years of this secret project, they had this massive manuscript, nearly 1,300 pages long, that would become A Course in Miracles. So what's it all about? What did this mysterious voice actually have to say? Let's get into it. So the book itself, it's one big volume, but it's really 3 books in one. First, you've got the text. That's the biggest chunk, and it lays out all the theory and metaphysics. It's pretty dense. Then there's the workbook, which has 365 daily lessons, basically a year-long training program for your mind. And finally, there's a manual for teachers, which is kind of a handy Q&A style summary of all the big ideas. If there's one quote that really gets to the heart of the whole thing, it's probably this one. The Course is basically saying that love isn't something you need to go out and get, it's already what you are. The real job, your task, is to find and get rid of all the stuff inside your own mind, the fear, the guilt, the anger, that's blocking you from experiencing it. The Course uses this brilliant analogy to explain how this works. You know how Michelangelo supposedly looked at that giant block of marble? He said he didn't actually create the statue of David. He just saw the masterpiece that was already trapped inside, and his job was just to chip away everything that wasn't David. And that's exactly how the Course sees its most important practice, forgiveness. Forgiveness is the chisel. It's the tool we use to chip away at what the Course calls the ego, that whole belief system based on being separate, judging others, and being afraid. By forgiving, we're not saying what someone did was okay. We're just letting go of our own painful judgments, removing those blocks to reveal the love that was there all along. Now, to understand where that ego even came from, we gotta go a little deeper into the Course's metaphysics, its own kind of creation story. And fair warning, this is where things can get a little out there. But it's the foundation for everything else. So the Course says that in the beginning, there was just this perfect, unified oneness of God. But then a tiny, mad idea popped into the mind of God's Son, and by the way, that includes all of us. This was the crazy thought that it might be possible to be separate from our source. The Course is really clear. This separation never actually happened. It was just a thought that kicked off a really, really convincing dream. So what you have here is this fundamental split in perspective. There's reality, which it calls heaven, a state of pure spiritual oneness and love. And then there's the dream. The dream is our entire physical universe, this whole world of time and space, where we experience ourselves as these separate little bodies, all vulnerable and alone. Okay, so if this is all just a dream, what are we supposed to do about it? Well, the Course says that in every single moment, our experience is shaped by a choice between two different voices, or two thought systems, that are always available in our mind. Think of it like having two radio stations playing in your head. On one channel, you've got the ego. That's the voice of separation. It's constantly whispering, you're all alone, you're guilty, you've got to fight to survive. On the other channel, you have the voice of the Holy Spirit, and that's just the memory of who you really are. It's gently reminding you, hey, relax, this is just a dream. The separation never really happened. But why on earth would we ever listen to the ego? Well, according to the Course, it's because the idea of being a special, unique individual is actually pretty appealing. We kind of like having our own identity, even if it comes with a side of fear and suffering. The thought of just disappearing back into this formless oneness, well, that can feel like we're losing ourselves. And this is the most important part. The Course says there's a part of our mind it calls the decision maker, and that is your superpower. It's the part of you that has the constant ability to choose which voice you're going to listen to. Your power isn't in changing the world out there. It's in changing your mind about the world. And this brings us right back to the Course's solution, which is so simple, though definitely not always easy. The whole problem, all of our suffering, started with one mistaken choice, the choice to believe the ego. So the whole solution is just to undo that choice and choose again. And in the end, after all 1,300 pages, the whole teaching really boils down to this one single practical question, a question that it asks us to bring into every moment of our lives. Right now, which voice are you listening to?